Hi everyone and welcome to the channel, and today we are going to have a gear review. So today I'm going to talk about my view and a review on the Big Agnes Copper Spur HL UV, Big Agnes Copper Spur HV UL2, so a high volume ultralight tent. And you noticed I don't have the tent with me because it is actually up in Steamboat Springs with Big Agnes, and I'll talk through a little bit of why I returned that and exactly what I'm going to do as far as next steps. But I did get the opportunity to use the tent this summer in Colorado, so at elevation and in the mountains, as well as early fall and late fall. And I went through very hot days, I went through a hailstorm, and I went through snow and very cold temperature down to 9 degrees. The only thing I didn't get to do with this tent was actually take it out in the rain. So you could say I field tested it quite a bit before giving this review. And I actually recorded something early on when I first got the tent and I was doing an initial setup outside at a state park, just to kind of walk through the tent, what are the specs, what I found out were something kind of weird in the design, and what does it really mean. So what I'm going to do is actually play that video, and you can hear my comments on there, and then I'll comment a little bit about things that I found out or things that didn't work later on that I may have liked early on in the video, but now kind of thinking back, it's like, oh, that probably wasn't a good idea for the tent, or something could be better. And so the order of this video, and I will put the time codes in the description if you just want to fast forward to different parts. So I'll start with that initial setup and review, and then I'll go into the dog friendliness part of it, because as you guys know, I always hike and camp and backpack with Remington. So it's kind of just a little bit of an opinion of, is this tent really dog friendly? Will my dog like it? Can I really carry it around with them? So go into how dog friendly it is, and then also show you, because I just unboxed this today, the Big Agnes HV UL2 Bikepack. So this is the 2021 version. I don't think it's available in most stores yet, but I was able to get my hands on it because Big Agnes had sent me this because I have my other tent. So I will end this video by saying I think I'm going to keep the Bikepack tent for various reasons. So if you're trying to make a decision between buying the regular standard Copper Spur and then the Bikepack, some of this information might be useful, helpful for you in making that decision. Okay, so here we go. I'm going to try to put myself in a box. I don't know what side of the screen, probably this right side, and I'll let this video play. Okay, we're going to do a short little video on setting up my Sorry about the wind. HV UL2 for the first time. So hopefully this continuous autofocus works. And don't worry, I fast forward through some of the parts setting up and then just slow it down when I start to comment a little bit on the setup. Alright, so I'm staking out with the Big Agnes tents, this Big Agnes stakes, which I would say if you live in a rocky area or hard ground area, you probably want to upgrade from those stakes that they send with it. Overall, I was able to get them in the ground for the most part, but they are not as durable as I thought. Okay, so just set up the footprint, and to note those who are buying the footprint with the tent, it doesn't quite size up to be able to connect directly to the tent. So it's actually almost a separate piece, and I brought some extra stakes to be able to stake it out on its own. Okay. Just gonna pause there for a second because I did talk to Big Agnes customer service, and if you're wondering if the poles should go in both the grommets of the rainfly, if you bought of the footprint and the tent, they don't. There is no connection whatsoever between the actual footprint and the tent and the rainfly when it's set up in the full tent mode. So just consider that a separate piece. So if you're thinking about should I buy the footprint to do the fast fly setup, I would say it's probably not worth it if you've never had to use a fast fly setup and you've never really been in a situation where you have, which I have, and I'll tell you some of the reasons why a little bit later. But for the $70, since it doesn't interconnect and it's not you'll see later when I try to put the stakes in, it's not a very handy footprint for the tent. It really just protects the bottom, so you can go get your own footprint for it, or do something else for the footprint plate. What's nice about this tent is that it's actually color coded on each corner. So the shorter end, or the 40-inch end on this particular tent is red and the other is silver. So you just have to match up the ends and not turning it around. When I had to turn it around at the very beginning, it was because I have to think about how I'm sleeping with the dog, in which direction I want to face and how he's going to get in and out, and that's why I turned the footprint around. The color-coded part too is really useful at night, especially if you're really tired. You know which end goes with which, and it's easier to set up the tent at night because of that color coding. So I definitely really liked that in terms of ease of setup, is the color coding. This tent comes with a tent splint as well, but basically 2 front poles. And what you'll see is, again, the silver end, which is the wider end, will have its color-coded pole. Okay, a nice view of Remington. He's in the way, like always. Oh, what's really nice too is that Big Agnes made a keyhole style design for the poles, which when you're setting it up as one person, you don't get the poles flying out of each end as you're trying to stabilize the tent. So that design is actually really useful. What's nice about these poles is that they're also pre-bent. So it doesn't have as much tension when you're trying to put it together, which is really important if you're putting this up alone. I do like to stake out the footprint, not too heavily at first, just because it's harder to get the poles in, and you want to create that tension to be able to put the poles up. But this is the one that goes over the awning, and it doesn't actually connect to the tent, so if you guys are wondering, it doesn't. It kind of just lays on top and is held together by the tent pieces, so that can just be a little bit awkward for those who are used to the pole actually connecting to the tent. Let me get off. Come on. All right, and there we go. I'm gonna do a different type of video to guys show what it's like without the, so I can show you guys what it's like without the rain fly on. Just to show the corners that they're color coded here. And then just that the rain fly, when you don't set it up in the fly first attachment, it doesn't really directly connect the tent. So I'm going to hook it up to the rain fly from this buckle here. Okay, just gonna pause it right there. So that's what I was talking about when the rain fly isn't integrated with the tent, is that you can't put the tent pole in the tent and the rain fly at the same time to connect the two together. So it's kind of like a loose tarp underneath, and the only thing that's holding it to the ground will be those stakes, and you do need to bring extra stakes to be able to stake out the tent, because the tent stakes and the rain or the tarp stakes do not line up. And you do have these D doors, is what they're called, with double zipper, so it's nice because if you just wanted to stick your hand underneath to throw gear in. I used to have one that had a continuous zipper, and I'm not sure why they don't design them that way. I'm trying to look up if there's a benefit, but it would be nice to actually have a continuous zipper with both the zippers in either direction, being able to open or close that door instead of having to actually open two zippers to get out. So pausing again right there, I still don't know why that design with the two zippers going in is actually more functional than a continuous zipper that you can actually stick your hand in the top all the way if you need to, which I did that night because I had to unhook the awning from the toggles up above, but I had to open the door all the way in order to do that. So I'm not sure if it's a stability thing or not. I guess the only thing I could find from different reviews and just different people saying about these doors online is that the zippers are always in the same place at night. So I guess if you are trying to find the zipper on a continuous door, it could be up or it could be below, and these are always going to be in the bottom corner. Just had to adjust the angle a little bit so you guys could actually see the rain flag going up on top and how it's put together. So here we go. Okay, so here I'm just talking about how I actually like shepherd's hooks, especially for the vestibules and the sides, because I feel like, especially in Colorado, they help pull out and tension that side a little bit better. I know there's a lot of haters of those shepherd's hooks, but I actually do like them, even though these ones, I'll say here, really bad cheap aluminum ones that ended up bending. So later on, I could forget if I mentioned it, but later on, I actually just pull them out and end up staking them out with rocks because of that. There I go, I bent it. All right, fast forward. There's Remy. Just listening to the squirrels. Okay, and there you have it, the Big Agnes Copper Spur, 2020 Copper Spur HV UL 2. Now, one thing I did wish Big Agnes did in this version is connect or make sure that the rain flag could connect to the actual tent, because otherwise you do have to bring the extra stakes, which add more weight and is actually just really annoying. One thing I really liked about this tent after I was able to stake it down, I did end up guying it out too, but I was able to get it really taut. A lot of tents, no matter where you put that stake, you can't get the vestibules. Does it sound like I say vegetables? Vestibules as taut as you would want to. So if you move it to the left, the other one's loose. If you move it to the right, the other one's loose. So this one actually gets a really tight fit when you stake it out. The one thing I want to comment, and I'll pull out the Bikepack later, is maybe I'll just pause it here and then cut in later, is that there is no adjustment on the stakeout loops for the vestibule. So when the tent comes to you, you'll get like an extra piece of cord that comes with it that just holds the tent together like a little bow. And I would suggest just keeping this and bringing it with you, because you'll want to be able to add a little bit of length to be able to either stretch out this the stake and get that vestibule really tight, to make sure you have a good tight fitting tent. So overall, I really did love this tent. It was, I would say, the best in terms of the weight for the size and the price, even though the price is like pretty expensive. But if you're already in this category, you're kind of deciding between this and probably a Nemo tent, as far as what you want in terms of design and space, and ease of setting up, especially if you're just starting to go lightweight or ultralight for backpacking. This is a good way to ease into it, because it is a freestanding tent. I love freestanding tents, especially in Colorado, because you camp on really hard soil a lot of the time. So most of the time you can't stake down your tent if you have a semi-freestanding, and it's just a lot easier in terms of having that peace of mind to be able to set up the tent day in and day out. So the size and weight I definitely loved. I love that it was color coded and easy to set up because I'm frequently on my own for this. So I have to have something that I can set up easily, and I don't need a partner to be able to do that. So that one I could definitely do with ease, and Big Agnes with some of the designs made it even easier than my previous tent I had. So another thing I really liked is actually the awning openings, but not actually for the purpose of the awnings. The very side zipper, which is nearest to the tent poles, is actually a more convenient way to exit the tent than reaching over into a vestibule like you normally would for all the tents and having to pull up and out. So what I mean by that is that you can actually just stick your hand out the door and unzip right away if you're just trying to get out of the tent, instead of having to reach over and zip. So that's actually a feature. I don't think that was intended to make it easier, but indeed very, very easy. And then the floors are actually pretty low as far as getting in and out, so you're not tripping over the bottom of that door very much. And then there's just a ton of storage with that mezzanine bin, and I'll go over something I didn't like about it, but more in terms of if you have a dog and you want to use that mezzanine bin. But that storage for the mezzanine bin, and then the overhead storage for electronics. There is a electronic loophole that you can stick your cords down, but I never really got that or how you would use that, because usually then if I want to take out my electronic, I end up having to like pull out all my headphones and whatever cords I have running there, but they're available should you need them. So those are the really great things I loved. I'm not going to go through the dimensions and specs because there's a ton of reviews and videos out there. I'll name some of the channels: Adventure Allen, Hike Oregon, the Emporium Outdoors, and Pathway Alaska all have really great reviews, just kind of going over the initial specs and what they thought about it earlier this year when it was first released. And just note the one in Pathway Alaska, he actually goes through a how to not guy out this tent, which is opposite of what Big Agnes tells you. And he has videos of a windstorm he went through. So that one is really interesting if you wanted to watch that one. And so next I kind of talk about the space, and why I ended up having to return this to Big Agnes is that I actually specifically wanted the size and the specs and dimension, the top and bottom width of the 52 and 42, because it would fit my Cinmat Duo, so a double air pad for 2 people in there, and also fit 2 wide pads. Now, when I actually put my mattress in there just to test it out to see if it would work, I should have had at least 2 inches available to be able to have a little bit of wiggle room for that mattress. But when I put it in, the mattress was actually going up over the floors. So I'm like, I wonder if I should measure this. And this is the first time I actually even thought about measuring the tent to make sure it was cut to the stated specs. And there are a couple of comments that said, hey, this is too short, or it's not going to fit in here. And I will say I measured both indoors when I usually set up my tent and outdoors 3 or 4 times. I was back and forth in emails with Big Agnes saying it's not stated spec. It's like 3 or 4 inches below what it should be. And so I ended up sending in the tent so they can confirm and verify. Again, annoying because I had to pay for shipping for them to tell me that, yes, it was actually under what the stated specs was, but within their tolerance. And so I would just actually question that 4 inches of tolerance for their supplier. That's a lot of tolerance. So even if they're precision cut, maybe their tooling is off or they're cutting it exactly to that 52 inches, but by the time they sew it and seam it, it gets shorter and shorter. So they should really be either change their stated specs or work with their suppliers, in my opinion. I probably get some comments on this, but in my opinion, on getting that actual finished product to the specs that they're stating they're going to do. So just keep that in mind. If you're just camping alone and want this extra room, camping with you and your dog, and you're never really going to have 2 pads in there, then it's perfectly fine. But if you're trying to fit 2 wide pads, so 25 inches each, or a double, that's 50, it's not going to fit in the tent without it going up onto the side. So that is why my tent is at Big Agnes. And so again, we were going back and forth about why or what we could do. And they're like, well, if it's just a variable in the lot, can you send me another? Maybe that one's better. And then I waited about 6 weeks to get another tent, another same Copper Spur. And then I was emailed back saying, ooh, sorry, we're probably not going to get anything until May. That was not going to work. So I said, hey, why don't you send me the Bikepack? It looks like you guys are releasing those in March. He's like, well, I'll see what I can do. So that is how I came upon the Bikepack. And just looking at the different things, I actually think this may be a better tent for just a little bit more weight. And I'll go through what you could do to actually reduce that weight, but just a little bit of weight, with a little bit cooler features on there, or added features, and it's not necessarily just for bike packing. So enough with the dimensions of the tent. If that doesn't worry you or you don't really care, then you don't have to be concerned with the dimensions of the tent, but it is smaller than the stated spec. The second thing I didn't like about the design, I'll say, is if you are going to get that fast fly setup with the footprint or the tarp or the ground sheet, whatever you want to call it, it does not integrate with the tent. So it's a completely separate piece. So I actually did try setting it up because I went through a hailstorm. And so I actually set it up in the fast fly mode and then decided, hey, I'll try setting it up just so I could take cover in that hailstorm for like 20 minutes. And then I decided to try to put the tent up underneath. It is almost impossible because you have to move the pole from the other grommet to the new tent pole, and then you've got to restake it out after you do it. So it's kind of more of a fast fly setup if you're just using it like a normal tarp situation, or if you're just using it as temporary in order to take cover from the rain for a little bit, or from the sun if you're out in a desert area. So setting it up in the fast fly was not very convenient. So if you've never had to do that and you don't know the luxury of setting up a good fast fly tent setup, then probably not worth it to get the footprint. But I will say, when I did go camping, I actually have a video on this. It was freezing and it was snowing, and so it was actually easier to take it down, or I could take cover underneath that fast fly setup. I would say fast fly takedown is that I actually got all my stuff gathered and took down the tent and left up sort of a shelter while I was making breakfast and getting out of the snow. And I'll probably just play this little clip of Remy in there because he was trying to escape the snow too. But that was also one of my third things, which was kind of sketchy, is that I mentioned earlier that I was not able to do rain. I did snow, I did hail, I did everything else with this tent. But the sides of the tent actually started to sag quite a bit once they got wet from the snow. There was no water leakage, so I'll say that, but they did sag. So I'm not sure how that would hold up over time in the rain. And I know there was a comment of someone had tightened it up when it rained because it was sagging, and then once it dried out, it was this big crinkly noise. So there might be people over time reviewing that, but that might be an issue for you if you constantly have to change the tension on that tent whenever there's moisture. And then also that area at the top where the pole is, there was comments that rain does pool up there, and I can definitely see that with the tent sagging as it gets wet or it rains or it snows. So just something to keep in mind when you're purchasing that tent. Otherwise, I was completely dry. It worked well in the cold weather. What's really nice with the cold weather is that those tip lock buckles you can take off with gloves. So you don't have to take your gloves off every time that you want to take down the tent. So I was able to take down this entire tent with the tent first in the Fast Fly setup or takedown with gloves on. So that was something I thought was really good about the design of the tent, even though the sides were sagging. Okay, now just talking about the dog friendliness of this tent. I would give it a 8 out of 10, which I'll say is really good. So some of the key concerns I know from comments or people asking is really the floor, because it's about a 20 denier belief fabric where my previous tent was 70, but like almost a full pound heavier. So it's held up so far in terms of the dog going in and out. I do put in a cheap sort of camp towel. You can get them like $6.99 at Sierra Trading Post. And I always do that. So most dog owners, I think, have something on the floor. So just a cheap camp towel, which goes in there. Maybe I'll show the setup that I have with Remy. And then that also works if your dog's feet are wet or dirty. You can actually use the same towel to wipe off their paws as they get in the tent. So I never really had to worry about the floor. So I think if your dog is a big dog, Remy's 70-ish pounds, he's a big boy, but my little guy, that it would work for you. So those floors, I wouldn't have anything to be too worried about with your dog in that one. And I'll just say that just lay down a cheap camp towel and you should be perfectly fine. The second thing I really like is the actual low door entry. So in my previous tent, the door was a little bit higher up. And so Remy, sometimes when he jump in and out, his feet would get caught in that door and he'd trip a little bit. So this one is really good because it only sits about 3, maybe 4 inches above the ground, and he can easily get in and out. So if you have a smaller dog or if you have an elderly dog that's getting in and out, it just makes it a lot easier for the dog to get in and out of that tent. Okay, and then the third thing that I really liked about this, maybe it's actually my number one thing, but it's the third thing I said, is that side where the awning zipper is. So instead of having to reach out and usually have Remy like jump over me and then go underneath the vestibule when I don't have it unzipped yet, I can just stick my hand out of the side, it's left corner on this side, the side he gets out on, and then the zipper to the vestibule is about 4 inches away. So I can do that very quickly. Remy can run out whatever he wants to do. And that is like the number one thing that I thought the tent was awesome for having a dog, was that side zipper. And now I'm thinking about it, why don't manufacturers make more tents that have that very close side zipper instead of the one you have to reach way over in the vestibule for and pull all the way up. So I just thought that was a really cool design, not intended for dogs, I'm assuming, but if you are a dog owner and you're wondering, is this going to be easy for my dog? And that actually is easy for you to be able to let him or her out of the tent. And then the last thing that I thought made it really dog friendly was that the walls are so vertical. So from the sides and the ends, they go almost straight up, which if you have a taller or bigger dog and they're constantly rubbing up or they're standing up or they're turning around before they actually lie down, this feature was really great. I've had some tents where the ends are so narrow that the dog basically has to sit in the middle, but Remy was actually more comfortable sleeping at the very foot of the tent because it was so tall. So he was able to do that, and that was almost his favorite place. I'd start him off closer to me at night, but he'd always end up just in the corner because it was so comfortable for him to be in. So in terms of dog friendliness, an 8 out of 10. The only reason I think I wouldn't give it a 10 out of 10 is just because of the durability over time, but that's the choice you're making with these lighter weight tents. Okay, and the final thing with this video is now talking about the 2021 Copper Spur HV UL2 Bikepack versus the standard HV UL2 from the 2020 version. So I got mine yesterday and unboxed it today. So I was able to set up once indoors, and I'll kind of just walk through the major differences between the two, just in terms of designs that aren't necessarily mentioned by Big Agnes right now in their videos or online. And then why I am actually probably just going to keep this tent and the features of this tent. Okay, so one of the first features that you'll notice with this tent is the width. It is maximum 12 inches from the poles, and then the tent can actually compress down, and you do get a compression sack and not necessarily just a stuff sack. So this can fit horizontally within your pack if you're looking for something that's a little bit more tight fitting in your pack, or because of the daisy chains that are on here, you could actually hook it onto the outside of your pack if you want. Big Agnes does say that this outside pack is waterproof, but it's not seam sealed or anything, so I'd probably still be a little leery of sticking on the outside of your pack if you think it's gonna rain. I'm bringing some extra water protection for that. So these are the new designs for the poles, and they're calling them the short sticks. And that is because they are only 12 inches wide to be able to fit on handlebars, but perfectly good to fit within that horizontal framework, like I mentioned earlier, of your backpack. The poles with the original Copper Spur, or the standard Copper Spur, are 16 inches, so you can't fit them this way. You'd have to stand them up, and I usually actually put them on the outside of my pack, so this is a really good option to actually be able to stick in my pack all the way down. Now, I did have some concerns, and I talked to Big Agnes about this, that because there were going to be so many bends, because the poles are shorter, that was there any structural or stability issues, and they said no, it should have the same impact, they're just shorter. And then I was also concerned that it was just going to take longer to get the poles together, but when I pulled it out of the pack and I just did a quick whoosh, like that, like pretty much the whole pole set opened up like a Transformer Spider-Man thing and just came open. So no issues with actually getting the pole set up. It has the same stability and structure as the original Copper Spur, but a little bit more convenient if you want that smaller size pole set. Okay, now just talking about weight for a little bit. So the standard Copper Spur HV UL2 comes in at a packed weight of 3 pounds and 2 ounces, and the Bikepack version comes in at 3 pounds, 8 ounces. But you can automatically take 4 ounces off that if you actually don't use the compression sack that the tent came with. So one easy way to just shave off 4 ounces is actually just using your own lighter weight one. I actually don't use a compression or stuff sack for my tent, I just stuff it in there. So from a comparability standpoint, you're really only about 2 ounces more on the Bikepack with some of the added features versus the standard. So I would say if you like some of the features of the Bikepack, you should definitely go ahead and get the Bikepack versus the standard Copper Spur, and then you have at least the Bikepack of stuff with you in either case. The Bikepack does come with these Velcro straps, 4 of them. This is actually 2 put together, and that's to actually hang on your handlebars from the outside, but I use them just as compression straps, so I put 2 of them together for both the fly and the tent, and it worked quite well. So just a double use of it. Again, if you want to shave off those 4 ounces, you can just compress it in here and then stick it in your pack horizontally. Okay, I'm just showing you guys on the Bikepack, actually. This is where you're supposed to stake out the vestibule. Vestibule. I keep saying that wrong, like I said vegetable. So there isn't really much to do or much in terms of tension or adjustment. So definitely bring some extra line so you're able to adjust where you're going to tie down or stake out this part of there. So it's like it's really, really short and doesn't adjust. So that was one thing I just wanted to show. Okay, and just talking about the tent itself right here, there is nothing different about the inside of the tent with the standard Copper Spur versus the Bikepack version. On the outside though, there is a little elastic for the helmet, I guess, storage, which you can see in their video. I haven't figured out a way for this sort of elastic to be creative, so right now it's just extra, but I'm sure in the future I can definitely figure out something to put in there or use it for other than a helmet for the purpose of it. But other than that, the inside of the tent is the same, so you don't have to worry about that, and no other features. And so space, sizing, everything, and I did measure this one too, and it definitely measured 49.5 on the wide end and 37 on the short end. So again, having the same issue with the stated specs of 52 and 42 not being what the tent actually is. All right, and talking about what are some of the features on the Fly, and you can see this in Big Agnes's video as well, is that they've got these daisy chains on the outside to potentially hang wet clothes. And I thought, hey, that would be a great idea for backpacking too, to be able to hang wet clothes or clothes that you washed or really damp doggy towels. So I actually really like this feature. I don't think it adds any weight, but if you're interested or said, hey, that can be a great idea. Sometimes I don't have anywhere to hang things, especially if you're above tree line, there's going to be these daisy chains on the outside of the Fly that would be potentially useful to have, but haven't tried it in the field yet, but potentially useful to have to dry out things and not have to dry them out inside of your tent. And then lastly, one of the things I noticed, and it's not on the original, and it's not actually on any of the pictures or videos that I was trying to scan through on bigagnes.com, are these, and this is on the short end of the rainfly. There's 2 of them on each end. There's just these little loops, and I thought maybe when I was first setting up, because I saw them, that there was extra loops for guying out the tent in high winds, but there isn't any on the taller or the wider end of the tent. So I'm actually going to email them and send them a picture, since I have to get back to them on the dimensions of this tent, and ask them what these are for. So if I do find out when I post the video before or after, I'll update the link to let you guys know what the heck these are supposed to be for, because I was reading and didn't find out what they're supposed to be for. Okay, and so the last thing that is the big difference between the standard Copper Spur and then the Bikepack version are going to be the new Dirt Dagger stakes. Let me see if I can get a close-up of that. And most tents are going to come with these typical sort of angular stakes like that that everyone's used to, but these ones are supposed to be lighter, which I did. I think they're like 0.2 ounces and stronger, and have this I-beam construction. So if you can see that I-beam. Focus in. Okay. So I haven't obviously been able to test this quite yet because I just got the tent. But the ground is cold, so I might try driving them in tomorrow just to see how they work, but they're supposed to be better. I do always carry around some big titanium Tox fatties, so if you want to just compare the size, I'll also throw up a picture in that corner, just so you can compare the size. These are much better for our Colorado soil, so they work quite nicely. So we'll see how these little red guys do. But that's one of the biggest differences. So if you're worried about them, they're supposed to be better and stronger. So I'm sure Big Agnes would give you different stakes if you wanted to. But that's one of the biggest differences. There was a couple comments that they didn't seem strong enough, but just alternative. Try it yourself. Okay, and that's about it. Hopefully this review was helpful for those trying to decide between the regular Copper Spur and the Bikepack version of the Copper Spur. And also, if you're looking to get the Copper Spur and you have a dog and you're looking to travel with the dog, so hopefully this is helpful for you guys. If you like the video, make sure to give it a thumbs up. And then if you like the content and want to view the rest of my videos, just make sure you subscribe to my channel. All right, have a good day.